This video is a little tough, and initially I wanted to sit down and tell a story, but I need to be constantly moving, the energy to be flowing in order to tell this story. Otherwise, it can get really emotional, right? And plus, I'm taking you guys through an adventure through my epic walks and these walking diaries, and somewhere something may strike with you that you say you want to walk, which would be great, right? That's the goal. But you read the title, so you know what this is about. And no, thankfully, I don't have Parkinson's, but I don't even know where to begin. And to start this episode on Parkinson's took me many years to even get here to this point. Uh, First, I was embarrassed, um, shy, embarrassed, guilt. But it's my job as a son to represent my father in the most highest and purest, most honest and honorable way. So my father was my hero. We did everything together. They talk about weak men in today's culture, right? I came up from a time, I'm a Gen X, so I grew up heavily influenced by the era where men were just men, and I was raised well by him. So everything you're seeing on this channel, including snippets of my acting, you know, modeling, gigs, action, martial arts, these are all attributes he left me with. He just gave me a little guide, a sprinkle, and I blossomed into this flower. Sometimes that's all you need to create a star or someone that, takes and does something with it. I am a doer, right? So my father was pivotal since a kid, from everything to washing cars, doing all the hard stuff, carrying heavy stuff, lifting, putting it down. He wasn't really into what we are into. One of my younger brother and I, we love weight training, we love endurance, all the fitness stuff, but he was more of a functional guy, that old school mentality, like picking up boxes, cleaning cars, uh, all into his toolbox, right? So I'm painting a picture, and avid car goer. He had a Fiat back then, many Hondas, a couple of Toyotas. He was a big fan of Japanese cars, and I spent at least up until a good 13, 14 years of my life seeing him very normal, and he was my Superman, right? So at the age of 12, 10, 11, 12, I can't even remember now, we left Fiji Islands, where I was born, and then moved to New Zealand, which was an amazing place, by the way. And without getting angry or getting into the blame game here, it's also fair for me to depict this picture, right? You think about what's going on at home well before we were born. Three brothers, and as you get older, you start hopefully piecing your own puzzle together as to your whys and why this happened, why that happened. We always try to figure out, why am I this way, or who am I, right? Or why did that happen? There's some things that happen during childhood that never leave you, that leave an imprint, especially something as traumatic as that. For you, it could be something else. For me, that was what was happening to my father, and I didn't realize it. But even the backstory on that is that my mother was always nasty to him, and I could never understand why. My father was such a good man. Like, I kid you not, he was dedicated to my mother, man. He, he, my mother was a beautiful woman. She's a very pretty girl. She would be a 9 or a 10 in today's society if I showed you her picture, which I'm not. And I thank her for giving me birth, because I think I came out all right, looking all right, and my father's seed. But she was she was a big B to my father all his life. My father never cheated. My father had a great job in the office space, working for a newspaper company. He was an accountant, well respected, and he was ahead of his time. He bought land, very common to do back then, and he bought a couple of acres of land and built a house from scratch. And we still can see our childhood home. It was a mansion, about 5 bedrooms back then. In the 80s, it's a big deal. And the downstairs was a little studio that he was renting out. So he had a good business mind about himself. He was good with numbers, very good in reading, writing. He would also challenge my cousins to read and quiz them, right? So he was a coach in essence, and he quickly figured out in life that to get the nicer things, to get the comforts that life has to offer, you always have to be ahead of your competition. But also, there's no shortcut, because anyone can achieve it if they put their mind and heart to it and work hard for it. And my father would work hard, and my father pulled my mother out from this village that she used to live in, a very poverty-stricken area in the islands. And and when we used to ask him the stories, because he fell in love with the beauty. No offense, that's traditional. That's very traditional. That's how it used to be back in the day. So if you're a Gen X guy or a girl like me, you should know better that this is not a knock on women or anything like that. This is just straight conversation. So let's not get offended. Hopefully, right? Let's just keep it 100. That's that was her ticket, and she said yes. And I look at the younger pictures today, and I have some of their pictures from I kept in my album. And there's this innocent looking girl, and had me in her 20s, which is reasonable, because during that time it was normal for women to have kids very early on. I mean, some were giving birth at that time, like 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 year olds, even way before my father's time. But so now that I painted this picture for you, just park here for a second. Um, he built a home, and once things were stable, he did it the right way. We were born. I was his second child. I think the first child was a miscarriage. I have my suspicions about that, because of the domestic violence going on, of all the upheaval at home. She was constantly at my father's health. I mean, mindset, mental health, constantly just beating him down. And he was such a nice guy. And I even remember as a toddler just seeing some things that I shouldn't have seen. It's just very confusing. I would see things flying around in the household, like pots, pans, and it wasn't her. It wasn't him. He was trying to defend himself a lot, most times, and most times he was trying to diffuse the situation. Eventually, he would lose it, and his temper was pent up. And I don't think I've experienced any kind of. I've never seen anyone get that angry. Like, you could tell the rage over the years just pent up, built up, right? And she would compare him to other men. She would shame him that he wasn't enough, but yet he rescued her from the village, right? He gave her and gave her a better life, because hey, she was well taken care of. Money was not a problem. We were very well off. Everything was going as about as good as it can. It never fails, right? Sometimes when you give them everything, they still find a way to f it up, and that's what my mother did. I have my stories and thoughts and suspicions as to why she was doing all of this. Story for another time. Now flip it back to my father here. This should kind of give you a high level picture of the stress he was under every day, including suspicions of her possibly cheating. Obviously, she was flirting with other guys, men. Um, through my childhood, I remember all of this. I even saw it. I tried to deny it. I even saw this when we went to New Zealand. You know, and so all of this stress, I Parkinson's is a very tricky, um, controversial kind of a topic in terms of where and how it, the origination, how it, the symptoms, right? Where does it start? How did it happen? There are many reasons behind it, but I think mental health and stress has something to do with it. Just in my take, because my father was under, like the foot was on his neck. He was a workhorse. It never stopped, including the stress, the pressure. I would even he would tell me that mom wouldn't give him sex, and it was bad. So, and he was a very quiet introvert, very peaceful, loved his family, very proud of his boys. We turned out all right. It could have been worse, but we got to New Zealand. I think at about age 13, after we moved there or so, 1 year, 2 years later, 13, 14. Keep in mind, I've seen my father healthy all along. Like, he's my Superman. Like, he will even get through mom, right? Uh, we all started just realizing mom was a little weird now at this age, right? So I will never forget, was a cold winter weekend. We had a little bit of a routine, we used to eat at the table together. It's been many years since I've actually ate at the table with them. Um, just it feels weird now. But he was reading newspaper, and he was reading a newspaper, and as he was flicking the page, the newspaper was going like this, and then I would look at it and then laugh. Me and my brothers would giggle. We were innocent boys. We would giggle, right? Like, hey, you can't sit still. Try not to be emotional. We would laugh and then ignore it. And then we would look at him, and then he would, like, just hold it. And this continued to happen for months and months and months. Um, it took me right back there. I remember how confused I was. And apparently he already had told mom, right? So he had gone to the doctors early in the year. At that time, you got to remember, we did not know what Parkinson's was. Back in the 80s, we did not know what it was. We thought that somehow it would just kind of go away. Modern medicine would find a way to make it go away. And we never had that talk. We were introduced to it through a gradual timeline that we did not see coming. And then one day, the paper went from like this, right? Like shaking, to trembling now. So eventually, about a year later, by the time I was 14, 15, coming into my own struggles in high school there, with the fights that I was getting in, he told us that there's a condition that he has that's irreversible. And even then, it goes over your head. Like, no, I don't believe it. I don't even know what the hell. Who is Parkinson's? Does someone go by the name of Parkinson's? It actually is. There was a person that this condition is named after. So it's a neurodegenerative disease of the mind, the brain, right? You lose your dopamine cells, and your ability to control your movements rapidly decline, and dopamine cells eventually die away. So what we experienced in our early age, for me, was even sits with me till today. is onset, early onset symptoms. That's what Parkinson's. That's how I got introduced to that. And that's how I realized, not then, later in life, that we weren't normal. Yeah, we're normal, of course, but we weren't normal kids. We were chosen to do some great things, and I'm doing it now. But the chosen doesn't mean you're entitled. You have to work for it, and I'm putting in all the work I can. Let's start walking that way. Uh, so, as you can imagine, I grew up idolizing my dad. I did not like my mother even then. I knew she was off. There was a screw. There was something off. Even until today, she thinks she's God's gift to women, and she's well into her 70s, and she thinks that she's the most beautiful looking woman out there, and it's not true. Um, yeah, she took care of him, but let me just bring it back to the early onset and stuff. But it changed our whole family dynamics and what the future would hold for us. No one saw it coming because you could imagine, right, what happens after. I don't have to go into that detail, but I at least wanted to tell you this story of early onset. And it's confusing, especially if you are a teenager, to see all this transpire, to see your hero go down that way. It's a terminal condition. I'll talk about the eventual passing on the months that led up to it, but I had all these made up scenarios in my head to go to this amazing park. I'm actually here now to sit down and find this amazing bench in a corner. And once again, I'm looking for the setup, before I even get to. So I'm getting in my head, I'm getting in my own way of actually launching off the story. But, you know, you're never quite the same. All those things are there in my mind. Those things, and from early age, early childhood, are still there very much. It's how I choose to control those thoughts, those painful memories. Um, I still struggle with acceptance. Acceptance is a big one. I know there are families out there in a similar situation. It may not be Parkinson's, it could be cancer, it could be something else, but I know there are many people out there. And, I encourage you to tell your story and connect with me, or connect with others that you're drawn to telling their story. And so I created this channel. And when I did create it, I never launched it fully. Now I'm fully launched. And I don't care about much in terms of where. When I started, honestly, I was just like any other YouTuber. Yeah, I'm going to get rich. Yes, I'm going to monetize. And we all do it, right? But if you've seen my slow growth, but evolvement over time, I've changed. I've changed the way I talk. I've changed the content that I produce. I'm giving it to you straight. This is not even acting. I have PTSD when I see things shaking. I see I'll see senior citizens or men a little older than myself, 60s, even early 50s, not so much in good health, right? But when I see them moving in a certain way, I can see the onsets and I recognize it right away. And it takes me right back to that. my father. Anytime someone flips a page over, one, page two, someone just like kind of scrolling through a magazine or newspapers, I have that newspaper in my head. That's post-traumatic stress syndrome. Like I can hear it. No one will know, but I go into this space where I just blank out. Like I can see my father, and it was terrifying. I couldn't imagine what the doctors may have, how this was presented to him. We were all waiting for a cure, praying for a cure. We would talk about, you would get better, you will get better, dad, you'll get better, dad. We had no idea what the F we were talking about. We were just operating on hope and prayer, which is nice and warm and fuzzy and all, but if there's no cure for something and it's irreversible, there's nothing there. You have to watch the painful decline. Then you combine that with a crazy mom that I've had. I cut her out from my life 3 years ago because I had seen enough as an older man, and I started to realize that I wasn't the crazy one after all. Neither was my father. It was her. And you don't have to agree with me, but for me to, like to think I'm a very intelligent person, technically savvy as well for the jobs that I worked at in the corporate field. I've boxed with the best of them in terms of salary and positions. I analyze things, and you have to audit your own life because I kept running away from a lot of these things. The combination of a crazy bee of a mom and a beautiful father was my hero. He was already battling her, and now he got Parkinson's, and it just didn't make sense. So he was taking it from many sides, from many angles. I can just vent a little bit and say that he should have left her because he would have found peace. I would have been okay with that decision because I knew she was crazy, even as a kid. We would run to my aunties. We would be drawn to other mother figures. Not her. She was off. She's alive. They say narcissists live forever, like a long life. It's true. I'm not wishing anything ill, but it's really true. I've had therapy sessions and coaching sessions with specialists, recovering narcissist children. There's plenty out there. It's hard for me to now not mix and, cross over to that story and then just keep, not just keep it to Parkinson's because it's same household, right? And yeah, in the tail end, once I'll turn around because it's so noisy there. Once once she knew this was happening and this is the life, then the tables flipped on her because now she would have to be the breadwinner, and eventually my father would lose his job, and eventually he would lose the ability to drive his car that he loved so much. And one day I just remember him coming home and just throwing the keys, saying he's done because he was a hazard to the road, on the road. It was a great driver too. So what good is being alive, I ask myself, if the very things that made you a man, the very things that fed your soul, and you lose your ability to do all of that over time. It's a slow death. It's like living and dying. You're a living vegetable. You're essentially dead. And he became a couch potato. But all this happened slowly, and it was so cruel that it became normal for us. You understand? When you are in a storm, thick in the middle of chaos, at first you're all over the place. Even as teenagers, right? That's you're even more innocent and susceptible to more mental trauma, right? Because you're so innocent, you don't know any better. So we're all in this storm together, including my crazy mother, who completely continued to misguide us through our entire life. But the storm was ours because it's the same household. So we eventually figured out that this shit's crazy in a way that it became our new normal. So everything for us downgraded. The big house went away. We went from that to poverty. When we came to America, it wasn't all roses. We went back to poverty. We lived in a pretty bad part of town in California. I won't name the city because people are going to come for me, but if you know, you know. And that was her decision. She forced us into coming to this country in a way that compromised my freedom, if you know what I mean. Immigration issues. And my father was not in a favor, but she ganged up with her sisters. It wasn't the sister's fault, it was her really driving it and painting a negative picture of my father that, he kept her captive. It was not true. It was not true. I mean, I love my aunties, specific ones, but they're all kind of crazy. But the one who's really off is my mother. If you come from an Asian background, right, East Asian background, even South Asian, um, but it's very normal to have some of this very strong personalities. But everyone called out my mother, said there's something off about her. So the combination dealt us a bad hand. So all I've known my entire life is to operate within the storm, how to embrace the storm and pain, sadness, depression. I didn't even know I was going through all of this until one day, many years after my father passed. He passed in 2018. I would say 3-4 years later, I realized I'm I can step away from all of this. I'm addicted to these thoughts, this pain, this everything that I've known is a storm. I'm attracted to trauma. I'm attracted to mayhem. And if there's no mayhem, I can operate properly. How toxic is that? This is normal. This is real life. And so when the good things and good fortune comes my way, including good women, gorgeous women, I push them away because I don't know how to receive that love. I don't know how to exist around that because it's abnormal. Does that make sense? This is probably my longest video on this channel. Again, no, I had not planned to do this, but I'm rolling with the punches because If I don't start this video now, it's not gonna get done. I have a casting shoot, a callback tomorrow for one of a feature film being shot in Las Vegas. So this is also therapeutic for me, and I'm getting my walk, my steps in. Over 2 miles in now. I'm heading back, but I don't know who's gonna see this video, to be honest, other than a handful of clicks. Or if it gets to you, I encourage you to share your story. There's a lot of sadness in this story. There's a lot of pain, and when that person that's actually dealing with it passes, there's a bit of a relief there, and you almost want them to pass quicker. In my father's case, he lived till 73, and he got diagnosed at 35. So unfortunately, it was a slow and very cruel decline, and we kept thinking there would be a cure. I know Michael J. Fox and his foundation back in the 80s, when he developed it. That's still an ongoing research, but I'm hoping that with now the new government in place, recent elections, we consider more modern medicine on how to fast forward and speed that up, so we can help more people facing this neurodegenerative diseases, conditions. I'm sure there'll be a cure one day. One day. I mean, I'm nearly 50. I haven't seen a cure yet, but it will be something to, if I'm in my lifetime, if it does happen, that's redemption for me, is because I know there's hope for the future for people undergoing that in their families, dealing with that. Parkinson's doesn't just happen to the person that has it. It touches and impacts you in ways, your loved ones, in ways you can't imagine, because it feels like you're going through it as well. Hands down, you feel every bit of it. The vibration, the frequency, the pain, the tears, the dark, the way people look at you. I haven't even gotten to the public. People are very evil, man. People are. That's why I choose to remain very private, introvert into myself. I love my alone time. I don't hate human beings. I don't hate people. But you get the saying when I say I hate people. Not in a way you think that I just hate. I just hate people for this exact reason. We couldn't even go to restaurants properly. Dad was shaking and spilling all his food all over the table. Mom was feeding him through spoon, hand feeding him. It was never enjoyable. It broke me to pieces to see how other people would look at us. It broke me to pieces. Every time we would get invited to a function, parties, events, life events, I missed a lot of opportunities with my celebrating with my father. Because I was in my early 40s when he passed, so I missed an entire life of not having him. Of everything that I achieved, I was hoping to somehow magically get his energy, right? Like somehow I would see him bounce up on his feet, and we're back to where we were as kids with all that joy and energy, and it never came. Point is that it's not his fault. I get that. And in hindsight, you always wish you could have done more. I was already fighting my own battles. I was already having a very turmoil relationship with my mother, just because I was the oldest. I started coming into age, right? I started understanding puberty. Puberty can be very frightening if you don't have the support of your parents and you don't know what's going on with your chemicals, your hormones. Your attraction to girls. I was surrounded by girls all the time. Just, I had a great set of hair. Just kind of a handsome kid. So I feel better talking about it and just, putting it out there like this for anyone to see it. And while we're doing it, you get to experience nature together. For the longest time, I ran from all of this, the turmoil at home, a very toxic mother who was still pissing on my father even while taking care of him during Parkinson's. On the flip side, yes, props to her, but she was really good at showing people the angel she was, but she wasn't. It did humble her, though. She changed a little bit. At the core, a lot of her toxic habits remain the same, but she realized that she cannot operate with a high sense of pride of where she used to be back in the day, because things changed all of a sudden. My father lost his corporate job, and they went that salary, and the living cost of living and all of that, it would be on her. And I will give my hats off and say she worked really hard for the reasons, that is to barely pay rent. You could just imagine how those stories were. I don't need to go there. There's not all bad in what she tried to do, because she tried to do what she could do. She did her best with what she could and had. But a lot of this, she brought it upon all of us, including the way we dropped everything in New Zealand and moved to America. It didn't have to happen that way. I think that also broke my father. And the only thing I would say is that if I was in his shoes, and I'm not, if I was dealing with a crazy woman like that, I would have just left her. She did not deserve him. And I think I'll roll the dice and say, if he had someone more loving, maybe not as hot, because it's hard to find both in the one package, right? But if he had someone else outside of that, maybe not so good looking, but who brought more peace of mind and supported him more, because that's what men really need and crave for, is that rock by their side, that woman that can add to their lives. I think all the stress he endured before the onset, I don't think it would have contributed to Parkinson's, because there's a lot that happens in your brain for that to trigger, right? Technically, I have the gene. Like, there's a gene there, right? Technically. But it's dormant is because you can control a lot of the elements and environment around you. And you see how all of this ties back to health. Fasting, right? I talk about this till nausea, but fasting, giving your digestive system a break from constant processing. What I'm doing right now is walking on a fasted stomach, but also absorbing vitamin D. It's in the mid 60s, which is perfect. I'm in my shorts. And I know that all of this, it takes a combination of all of this to come together to aid your system, your machine, your body to operate optimally, including your bowel movement, right? When you go to the bathroom, all of this, colon cancer, right? I thought this was going to be a tough story, but now I'm smiling. You see how walking is also therapy. Walking is therapy. You get to tell your story. I thought this would take me forever to tell the story. But oh cow, I gotta. And bees are following me and tracking me. Fall season. But yeah, this. Thank you for listening. I mean, I'm trying to see if I missed anything else. By now, if your brain is working, if your emotions are, you know, kind of flowing with this, please tell me. Be honest. People show who people will show you who they are during times like that. When you have a parent battling a terminally ill disease, people will show you who they are. I People consider us less fortunate. Yeah, I didn't have my hero, but there's a silver lining in that. It made me into this amazing man, this strong-minded Kobe Bryant Mamba guy. All I know is how to fight. That's all I know. And if I'm not fighting for something, it doesn't seem normal. I operate best under pressure, a little bit of chaos. Some things are not going to leave you, right? At this point in life, you're creatures of habit. If you're used to something, that's just how you operate. So when there's a conflict, when there's a situation with my, like my girlfriend, we get into little tidbits here and there. I know how to handle it. I diffuse it quickly. I refuse to let my emotions get the best of me, and I have just better control of my temper, of my explosion, of what I could do. And based on my experiences, I can just control myself honestly, a lot better. Because I've seen worse. There we go. Why was I struggling to say that? I've seen a lot worse. I've handled a lot worse. I can deal with a mother like mine. Everything else is relatively kindergarten. Anyway, folks, sometimes it's okay to just be quiet, and not say anything. A lot of people won't relate to you anyway, especially in this situation. And you realize that other families may have other stuff going on, other bullshit going on, right? No one's families are perfect. There's always something going on within that circle. Every household has some problems, right? But when you start to add in extreme health conditions such as this, it changes the whole trajectory of just your identity. Anyway, folks, this is about a little under 45 minutes, and I think I will leave it here. Normally, I would knock out like 3, 4 videos, but I wanted to get this Parkinson's one. I used to be deathly scared of just saying the name, taking the name of this, but I can talk about it, this topic. Okay, I'm on the busiest side of the street here, folks, so it's going to get really noisy. I'm going to cut it here. You know how this goes. Till the next one, Mamba out.